Well, you look sharp.
There we go. All right, and it is I, Charles Moscowitz, for our weekly news wrap up with Michael D. Shaw. Mike, thanks for joining me.
Always a pleasure.
Mike, you sent me a very interesting video from John's talk.
I thought you'd
Um,
like that.
I did like it, and it really makes a case, and I think we should start by discussing it, and that has to do with Biden last night at the debate. So, what should we? What did we see there?
Okay, well, the John actually uh, was commenting on some other source who I think presented it first, but the idea was that it very clearly shows a wire that was hidden under Biden's jacket, with the implication being to some sort of flesh-colored small earpiece. Uh, and he had it fiddle with that a couple of times and touched his ear in a manner that was otherwise rather unnatural. Most people don't scratch their ear in the bizarre manner that he did.
Yeah, it kind of was cupping it like this. I mean, and you can see. Look, you could go to the video. I posted it already earlier, and I'll post it again here.
Good,
But
good.
it clearly shows a wire briefly hanging out of Biden's jacket and onto his shirt, and then he kind of adjusted himself so that it could go back under the shirt. And the other thing it shows is at his cufflink area, the shirt area,
By his wrist, yeah.
by his wrist. You see this device that looks like a pen, but why would somebody stick a pen up their shirt? It had like a little nobular like head to it, and it looked like some kind of a mechanical device. And then the third thing he notices is his eyes. He contrasted it with pictures of what his eyes usually look like, which is somewhat light colored. His eyes were very dark. And while that might have had to do with lighting, it could have had to do with a lot of things. Apparently, there is this new technology. I don't know a lot about it, but it can literally, it's like a contact lens that can show like a teleprompter before it, apparently, or something like that.
Yeah, well, I guess if you build it up from, forget all that for a moment. Everybody remarked that Biden seemed to have more energy and be more lucid than he had been in some time. And then if you sort of back up and say, okay, if he did get these illegal aid,
Enhance. As Trump said, he got a gigantic shot in his ass.
Yeah, yeah. Then it completely excuses why Trump reacted the way he did, because there's a further story that Trump knew about this, couldn't really do anything about it other than aggressively keep interrupting so that there wouldn't be sufficient time for the people that are feeding Biden the lines to suddenly change horses that quickly. There's some credibility to that. I don't know how far it's trending on Twitter. I was gonna look.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's the case. Who knows? I mean, what I saw there, and I watched it very carefully, of course, is that I think that, and this is not good, that all of the 4 years of attacks on Trump personally, on his family, and just the torture of it, like the Chinese torture effect, bang, 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 every single day, week after week, year after year. And now they're really throwing every piece of crap they can throw at him. They're claiming he didn't pay taxes, and who knows what else they're coming up with. When his family came in, you could see from the expressions on their faces, they just looked very grim and very kind of serious. And it was like, I think that maybe after all this time, and with the pressure of the home stretch, and with the raising of the level of the venom, I think it hopefully it's not the case, but I think it might be finally getting to him, and that he just is expressing his frustration and his anger, and then when Biden comes out with these usual ridiculous sort of lies. Oh, well, he lies a lot, and just all the usual cliches. I just think he's like had it. I mean, he's like, he's just losing it. And I don't blame him. I mean, I can't imagine how he put up with this all these years. It's almost it's almost like a superpowers to deal with that kind of hatred and that kind of constant abuse. I mean, there've been death threats recently. There's been several attempted, assassination attempts. Just the pressure of this whole thing. I just wonder if it's not kind of getting to him to the point where he's kind of not in as much control as he should be. And I think that some of the commentators said, and I actually think they're right, that if Trump had not interrupted Biden and let him kind of ramble, then he would have been more effective because Biden would have hung himself.
There may be some truth to that, but I think if you put it in the context of that, he was also debating Chris Wallace, who saved Biden multiple times. I'm not sure that we need to go through specific instances, but it was clear that when Biden was in trouble, which happened quite a bit, it was either time to move on or Trump got in. Trump was interrupted, I think was it 76 times.
Right.
Wallace. Mm-hmm. Biden, far fewer. And I don't know whether it's so much that Trump had suddenly had it, but what's your strategy going to be? I mean, you have the moderator against you, you have the media against you. Are you just going to sit there and take it? And,
no.
And what if he had?
They would have totally cut his throat. Yeah. He had to go in this swinging, and under the circumstances, he was able to respond and present his positions. Maybe he could have done a little bit more in the positive area of just showing the incredible accomplishments of his presidency. And Biden, of course, was flat out lying about a lot of things, and they're not going to look at that. I keep hearing, I heard throughout, for example, the Republican convention, all these weasels. We got the lie detector out. We're going to bring in the fact checkers, and they're like, but they're not going to do that now because Biden was flat out lying, particularly about his son.
He was not challenged on any of that.
No.
And moreover, when Trump raised the point of that, which I wasn't even aware of, that $3.5 million payment from the mayor of Moscow's wife, I think it was, that was just, we're going to move on. Who cares?
Oh, something that's a lot worse than they even got into. I mean, first of all, that's the only evidence of that's come out at all of any kind of collusion with Russia. I mean, even Trump's tax returns, which the New York Times illegally obtained and released, and they didn't show any collusion, very, very little, if any, business with Russia, and nothing illegal. Whereas in that case, some Russian oligarch's wife, the mayor of Moscow, wired $3.5 million into Hunter Biden's private account, and that he used a portion of it for hookers and for cocaine. I mean, talk about corrupt.
Yeah.
What?
I was going to say only a portion.
Who knows? I mean, the point is, it's the guy. I mean, it's real corruption. I mean, this is the very classic definition of corruption. You have a father who's the vice president, and you're selling. He's selling his office for money. Well, what is corruption if that's not corruption?
I think a valid question that is never asked. Okay, as far as I know, Joseph Biden has never had a private sector job.
No, he went right into government.
So how do you become this wealthy?
Yeah, he's enriched every members of his family, his brothers, his sisters, his sons, his relatives. Everyone around him has been enriched. Now he can show a regular salary because I don't think he personally, it's a classic example. I mean, I don't think he personally takes the money, but he's used his office to enrich his family over time, and in the process, he's compromised the interests of the United States. I mean, he certainly did that with Ukraine, right? The Burisma deal, and also, I mean, Trump brought out the fact that he had that interview on the Council on Foreign Relations of all groups. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, he was flat out saying that.
yeah, I mean, the
$1 billion.
ultimate insider, establishment organization, where he very carefully said, look, you will fire this guy or you're not getting your aid. And then, damn it, he was fired.
Yeah.
And I mean, and Trump and Biden just got away with saying, no, that's not true. And no one challenged him. And Trump was like incredulous. Of course it's true. But nobody cares. They're not challenging him on it. It's almost like he now has immunity for that. And instead, they're going to talk about Trump lying. I mean, they just was constantly just denying these things when it's clear as day. I mean, these things are out there, and then to deny that Antifa exists, it's not a real organization. I mean, I don't blame Trump for getting a little apoplectic, but I mean, and it's easy to say from hindsight. I mean, I can speak to this. I've been in situations like that where somebody is throwing real garbage at you, and you get wrapped up in it emotionally. I think Trump is actually pretty good at not letting that happen, but you get wrapped up in it, and then you forget who you are for a minute. You forget to handle it, dispassionately, and you start swinging. And I mean, it's understandable. I mean, I've had it happen to me many times, in the course of like interviewing someone and they start throwing this crap.
Oh, sure.
I mean, it just does. And so I think that, I mean, it would have taken super strength, but if Trump had maybe been a little calmer and he would have dissected this carefully, it probably would have been more effective, I think. Maybe
I'm not
maybe
sure
not.
Wallace would have given him the chance.
Yeah, Wallace is there flailing, his arms akimbo. He was like, just with his goofy look, just awful.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is another case, and this is a theme that I've said on your show a couple of times, that the child's always worse than the father. I mean, Mike Wallace was terrible.
Oh, yeah. Mike Wallace was talk about like a Jew-hating, self-hating Jew. I mean, well, I don't want to go into it, but
okay. Well, what I'm saying is that one of the characteristics of Mike Wallace was that I believe the name of the guy was Larry Duggan, who was caught up and accused of being a communist.
Oh yeah, the Lawrence Duggan, yeah, late 1940s.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so thank you. And what happened was he was heavily defended by Wallace and that other SOB Cronkite. And then when it finally came out incontrovertibly that Duggan was dirty, then it was sort of the same thing that Chris Wallace did. Well, hump for old news, and
oh, they just swept it under the rug. Yeah, Lawrence Duggan, I think it was either Lawrence Duggan or it was Frank Koch, who was the first head of the World Bank, who actually left the country in advance of testimony and spent the rest of his life in China, with Mao Zedong. One of them did. They're really, really bad.
So and by the way, who comes up with the questions and picks these moderators? Why is it always rigged?
Yeah, it's just exactly. I mean, I don't, Mike. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, it's very discouraging today looking at polls. Rasmussen, which is usually a pretty good poll, they have. I hate to even say it, they have Biden doing, getting a bump.
Well, I think that Biden gets a bump, ironically, because Trump should have done better, and Biden didn't completely fall on his face.
Right, exactly. The expectations were so low, and I even think that it might have been a little bit of a kind of a rope-a-dope moment for Biden and his people, like a few hours before the appearance, to go out and request that he gets a break every half hour. In a way, it kind of Trump really was like, he can't even stand up for a debate. It kind of added to this kind of mantra that he's completely incapable and incoherent. So then he could come out and do this, and it was like, oh, okay, this is another person.
Yeah, I mean, there were just a big disconnect between the Biden that we've seen all these past months and the guy that comes out there. I mean, not that he was great last night.
Right, of course.
But who knows whether that object under his on his wrist was some sort of IV. That's been suggested. Um, it's
I think that
hard.
they should have to answer to it. I mean, instead of like
Well,
it
they
just
never
sort of,
will.
yeah, I mean, it's going to be like we're going to be called wacky conspiracy theorists by mentioning this.
Um, yeah, well, I mean that's the old story. I mean, the as you know, the origin of the term conspiracy theory as being pejorative was when someone mentioned MK Ultra, which actually was true,
Of
but it
course.
was dismissed as a quote conspiracy theory, and that became a word that always is used as a pejorative. Uh,
Especially by people who actually are cooking up conspiracy theories,
yes,
like the
yes,
biggest one we've seen in modern years, which is that Donald Trump is a Russian spy. He's
right,
spying for the Russians,
yeah. So
something that they still adhere to. You know,
now, I
it's
guess the good news on something like this is that I really doubt that anybody who is a Trump or Biden supporter is going to be swayed by this debate. I suspect that whatever bump that Biden got was from, I think, your proverbial suburban white women who were, I guess, appalled at how aggressive Trump came across. But it's really hard to put anything substantive on that because there was no fact checking. Uh, Biden didn't make any significant points that I'm aware of.
no,
And it was all that Biden did better than expected. I
yeah,
think it
basically,
was
it was all like a stylistic thing.
but look what they didn't discuss. Biden refused to talk about packing the court.
He did.
The word abortion was never mentioned, uh, and Biden came across bad on Law and Order. Uh, he did not answer that rather tough question: what law enforcement organizations have supported you? Uh, he kind of tried to filibuster that one. So uh, it was sort of painful to watch because uh, there was nothing new from Trump in the sense that we knew he'd be aggressive. There was something new from Biden in that we thought he'd be a walking dead man, and he wasn't for an hour and a half. And Wallace has always been a putz. And
I mean, the one moment that I kind of cringed a little bit was when they brought up the after talking about Antifa that that the Trump said, look, these are mostly left wing radicals who are burning down the cities.
right,
I wish that he had made a little bit more of the point that they're burning down black neighborhoods, looting black businesses, killing black people, and then they're like, well, will you condemn white supremacy?
well,
Which
that was so
which
stupid.
which by the way, Trump said yes, I do, but at the same time, he then defended the Proud Boys who are in Portland. Now, I think that it needs to be said, and I know the media is never going to talk about this, and Trump maybe should have said something. But the Proud Boys, regardless of what you might think of them, they're not white supremacists. They're about one third of them are black, and
Yeah,
about another third of
yeah.
them are Hispanic. I mean, these are not. There's nothing white supremacy ish about them.
No, but it's been tarred with that brush.
It
So
has, and it's falsely. And I think maybe Trump should have, if he was going to
yeah,
mention them, and
that's
he
a good
did,
point because this is
he
a
surely shouldn't have brought him up. But once he did, I mean, you have to be careful to identify what they are,
yeah.
not
Well, I
to
mean, this
defend
is
them. I mean, I don't. I'm not here to endorse them.
no,
I don't know. They seem to be a little weird to me, but that's beside the point. The fact is that they are not white supremacists.
no.
I would say they're on the right, but they're not. It's not the way that the media is portraying it.
Well, it was the sort of the Cliff Notes version of who the Proud Boys are, and the media is very good. First of all, most reporters are very stupid, as we've said before, and it's a lot easier to go with trends and simplicity. Um, and of course, in the case of Trump's presidency, to get people riled up. Um, but I mean, going back to this, what's the source of the money thing? At least Obama can accurately claim that he was given these sweetheart media deals once he left the presidency. But Biden's never written a book, as far as I know. And where's all this money coming from? And why is it somehow inappropriate to talk about this?
The other thing is that Trump might have, I don't know if he did this, but he could have looked back a little bit at Biden's performance in debates in the past. And Biden is a shark. I mean, he's pretty good with that. He can rip someone to shreds. I remember what he did to Paul Ryan. Not that Paul Ryan's kind of a lightweight, but still, it was just devastating. He totally wiped the floor with him. I mean, there was nothing left when he was done. And Ryan, it was just before the debate, he asked for a glass of water and his hand was shaking. I mean, he knew what he was walking into. Biden is very good at that. I mean, he's been around for 40 years. He knows how to do that. If that's the one thing he can do, it's that he can go after someone and rip them apart.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm thinking of the same one that you are, the problem with Ryan, as you say, he's a lightweight, and the way to deal with Biden in a case like that is you got to go after him. You can't be polite because
That's
all
right.
the guy has is this silly blunt attack with nothing behind it. But
That's right, and I think that Trump, he did the best he could in that sense. Because I remember during his debate with Paul Ryan, I mean, Biden acted like a complete ass. I mean, he was giggling and smiling and smirking and strutting around, and
it's really a turnoff.
oh my God, it was horrible. But yet he
in fact, I did turn it off. Actually.
Yeah, it was brutal. It was almost impossible to watch it. But yet he totally destroyed Ryan, and Ryan was not up to it at all. Whereas Trump, at least, he did swing back. It was a fair, Biden is not the way he doesn't have the same, swagger he did in 19 whatever the year that was with Ryan, but he still has enough that he can do this, and I think that Trump did the best he could in terms of handling it.
Yeah, this thing is probably going to be reanalyzed for a few days until the vice presidential debate comes up.
Yeah, that's I think next Tuesday.
Which should be interesting.
That should be good. I mean, I think that Kamala Harris is such a loathsome individual.
Oh.
Just the worst. And I think that Pence is going to be able to handle that one pretty well. And I think that when Trump comes back, I don't know, maybe he'll have a little bit more of a grip. I hope that they start to expose the stuff that's on John's tape, because that is a scandal.
Well, I'm sure the Trump campaign has heard about this because this.
Why don't they start to yell? Why don't they yell about it from the top of the roof? I mean,
maybe
that's a scandal. That's cheating. I don't think most Americans are going to think that that's okay, except maybe the real hardcore. And it's not the first time that Biden's cheated. I mean, we know he has a long history of that, stealing, purloining speeches and lying about his past. So, I mean, I think that they need to grab this and verify this. Trump should have gone over to him and pulled the wire off his shirt.
Well,
held it up and said, "What is this?"
Yeah. Yeah. I read in a couple of places that they thought this might be going on, but what are you going to do? Stop there? But time out.
Yes. You go over there and you grab the wire and you hold it up. I mean, to me, I mean, that's all. I mean, actually, I hope
he's going to say, no, that's not what you think. This is a 1950 style hearing aid.
Oh yeah, he goes, well, it's kind of like in an elementary schoolyard. I got the ball. Come and get it.
Yeah.
We're going to have this analyzed now. Have somebody standing by who can take it and bring it to a lab and prove what it is.
Even if the Trump campaign per se doesn't go after it, there's enough sketchy individuals on our side that will try to make a big thing out of it.
I hope so. I mean, that's the way it used to be done. I mean, both the pluses and minuses with Trump is that, if it's Obama, if it's Hillary, if it's any of these other people, they always send surrogates out to do the hatcheting and the dirty work.
Yeah.
Trump does it himself.
Well, maybe he'll send Dave Bossie out or something. I mean,
that's right. He needs. I'm having on Friday. I'm having Corey Lewandowski on the show. I'm going to ask him about that. Yeah, I think he's one of those kind of guys.
Does he still
They
live in New Hampshire?
Yeah, he does. And I'm going
Oh,
to talk a little bit New Hampshire politics with him, whether how easy is it going to be this year for them to get busloads of people over the border in Massachusetts to vote a couple of times and then go back. We're going to get into that, but
yeah,
but the thing is that somebody needs to do that kind of tough, street work. To,
absolutely.
and I think one of those people, and this is not making a lot of media, but it might start to, is James O'Keefe from the
Project
Project
Veritas. Yeah,
Veritas.
yeah.
He has video of, he's got some stuff coming up, but he's working on the voter fraud angle. And he's got video that clearly shows that Ilhan Omar had massive voter fraud with huge amounts of money being paid to people to buy their votes.
Well, they
And
got this actual ballot harvester
yeah,
video.
that's right. And I think that she might go down over that. I don't think the Democrats are going to, they'll cut her loose. I mean, I think that that could result in some serious charges. Same thing with this guy in Texas. That one just broke.
Yeah.
Doing fixing the mail-ins and the mail-ins are going out. Trump is absolutely right about that. Even in New York, my ultra left wing relative got a phony ballot in the mail, right? That was filled out. That was not accurate. And I mean, it's. I think that they're
Well,
going to
how
get
did
a
he
grip
feel
on
about
that in
that?
time. No, they're still going to vote for Biden. That doesn't matter. We're talking, people who are cult followers. But the point is that even if they're getting this stuff, it's going to trickle out hopefully in time. I mean, this whole thing is a huge fraud. If somebody wants to vote absentee, if they don't want to go to the poll because they're afraid of the coronavirus, even though they probably go shopping and they probably go to the grocery store, they can
But you
take
can't
and
catch it there. Yeah,
oh yeah, of
yeah.
course.
I mean, one of the things, and we can go off on that tangent because it's funny. You can't catch it there. All right. If you're the 11th person in a gathering, you're going to get it. If you're the 10th, you won't.
Anyway, they can get an absentee ballot. Trump did mention that. I wish he could have been a little bit more clear about that, but I mean, he's taking an absentee ballot, and that's perfectly legitimate because
Yeah.
you have to have a signature, and you have to ask for it. It's sent to an address, and then you send it back. It's not just anonymously dropped in the mail.
No.
So there's no need for this. This whole thing is obviously a fraud. Get the absentee ballot if you're that worried about it.
Well, and have in Virginia and other states what's called absentee voting in person, where actually, believe it or not, in Fairfax County, at the main government office in city of Fairfax, it starts, I believe, October 15th. And then I think a week later at satellite offices. And you go in, and it's a small, it's a normal polling place at a government office. And there's a lot of people that do that. And
Oh yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think at the last election I voted early by going in person, but I waited in line at the polling place.
yeah,
But yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. That's been done. I mean, that's fine. The problem is the mail-ins. I mean, these massive, and they are finding fraud now almost consistently. They've got in Wisconsin. We talked about this last time. I mean, there's ballots showing up with Trump's name on it all over the place in garbage bins, and in ditches. So I don't know. I mean, I hope that can be taken care of in time.
well, I mean, there's certainly good people working on this. And let's just say that tip of the iceberg. I mean, whatever Trump and associates are talking about on the fraud thing, you can bet that below the surface, there's got to be an army of people working on it behind the scenes. And it's just unfortunate. But the Democrats have been dirty for a long, long time. And why stop now? I mean, the whole thing is so pathetic. If you take the bird's eye view of this thing, how in the hell was Biden their best candidate? I mean, how does that even happen? It happened with Republicans when you put up a fossil like Bob Dole. I mean, I get it, but
They
if there
didn't
was
have.
some,
They have a very thin field. I mean, they didn't want. They wanted to stop Bernie Sanders. Um, they probably should have let Bernie take the nomination. That would have been
well, okay, but
interesting.
but but tell me this: why did they want to stop Bernie Sanders when their own platform is essentially Bernie Sanders socialism anyway?
Because they don't think that Sanders can win. It's all like their calculations. They don't think that he's not going to be able to shift to the center and fool enough people. He is obviously a socialist, openly.
Yeah,
They need to have somebody like another Obama. Who
crypto socialist, right?
yeah, I mean, people, kind of a blank slate. People can then superimpose onto them whatever they want, and including some conservatives. I just
Yeah.
think that's what they look for. They didn't have much choice. The rest of that whole motley crew were all left wingers,
But
and they just didn't want to have that.
but you don't think? I mean, this is the okay. The analogy I use with, and you'll see the point here in a second. The analogy I use with the U.S. national soccer team. You mean to tell me that in a country of 330 million people, you can't, and plenty of immigrants, you can't find 20 guys better than what you have now? Okay, and there's something wrong with the recruiting because the establishment in charge is lazy and corrupt.
Mm.
If you're going to say, fine, we're going to go for these little preppy guys from a couple of East Coast colleges, and that's it. All right, now put that down to the Democrats. Well, we have this guy and this guy and this guy, but who the hell ever heard of Barack Obama as a state senator in Illinois? Somebody had to find him.
Well, look. I mean, this is the way the establishment works in a way. I mean, these unknown people. We could go back in history. I mean, that's how like they found Woodrow Wilson. He was this unknown college president of Bryn Mawr, and then Princeton.
Yeah.
And they just they said we're going to make him president, and they put him in as governor of New Jersey for 2 years, and then he was catapulted into the White House. I mean, this is how this works. I mean, you get a blank slate, somebody that doesn't have much of a record. But of course, Biden has been there for almost 40 years.
No, 47.
That's right, 47 years, incredible, 47 years.
47 years. And Trump said that he's done more in 47 months.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, and it's so true. I mean, I can't believe anybody would not support Trump, whether they like him or not. Just the presidency has been a sterling success in any sense. I could understand some people's trepidation when he was first elected, even though I liked him and that I knew who he was. I'd read his book, and I thought it was exciting. I can get the fact that average American are like, who the hell is he? And they felt nervous. But he's been there now for almost 4 years, and it's been an incredibly successful presidency.
Yeah, well, there are people.
By any standards, on almost any area you can point to.
Well, remember that a lot of people are still addicted to the mainstream media. And maybe their parents would watch NBC or whatever network or CBS, and that's it. So Cronkite was replaced with Rather, and Rather was replaced by some other schmuck, but this became the standard, So there are many people. I mean, you and I may not realize this all the time because we're on millions of different websites trying to get information.
Right.
Many people that are completely removed from that. People that might even be on our side, completely removed from that, aren't addicted to getting all this information. Maybe you spend more time. I mean, I'm looking at one of my sons, well, both of my sons, even though they're conservative, they're not really into following all this trivia. And occasionally they'll ask me what's going on with so-and-so and so-and-so. They're pretty active. I mean, one of it is law partners. So you got that kind of stuff going on, and young kids and whatnot. You and I have the luxury of well, we're interested in it. But
Mhm.
I'm saying that if you're getting your news from mostly cable, I mean, with the exception of what, Tucker Carlson, Lou Dobbs, Trish Reagan got fired. She was
Right.
pretty conservative
Yeah.
on Fox. And I found that I didn't know why she got fired until a couple of days ago.
Why was she fired?
Okay, well, this is interesting. She always had this little monologue, and it's pretty much no holds barred kind of thing. And when this was like in the third week in March, when this coronavirus thing was starting to be a big deal,
Hmm.
and she made the point that, well, we just finished the impeachment, and now they're ginning up this thing, and it looks like they're going to be a big overreaction to it. And she was gone the next day. Um, and of course, there was a big overreaction to it. So,
Yeah, I get it. She just didn't play ball. I mean, it's look, the media. I mean, I was talking about this the other day with a friend of mine, and also I had Janine Pirro on the show a couple of days ago,
okay.
and she was great. And there's still some people, although she's been suspended a few times. Uh yeah, they kind of it's you never know. The sword of Damocles is always floating. Um, the media now is owned by about four or five people, four or five companies,
Yeah.
and it's all consolidated. It's Disney, it's Time Warner, Fox, and I think two others.
Well, AT&T,
Right, and they own everything in the media.
Comcast.
They own the entertainment side, they own the news side,
Okay, what's the
the business
explanation
side.
though? Why does it follow that these big corporations are liberal? Do they think it's because that's the better consumer choice, or what? I mean, what's going on here with that?
I think that the left has wormed its way into positions of power over many, many decades, if
The
not the
march through
last
the
century.
institutions. Right?
Yes, it's the Gramsci's march through the institutions. It's Fabian socialism. I mean, you could look back. I mean, after World War One, when you had some historians step up and criticize the United States entry into that war, the whole area of history was purged, and it all became establishment. And they just gradually have purged the various institutions of culture to fit their agenda over time. It's a slow thing. They weed people out by attrition, they let them go, and then they work younger people up the rat line as they come up. These are people who are trained at elite liberal colleges. They can't get anywhere in those colleges unless they lean left. And, then they gradually assume positions of power. And it's a very subtle thing. It's like the frog in the petri dish. You don't know that they're heating up the water until it's too late, and then you can't get out. Um, it's just that simple. I mean, they take a very long game. They've got their finger on the scales, and they just continue to push it down.
Well, I mean that must be it. But so they've been so effective that either there's no executives of these companies who are conservative, or the ones that are keep their mouths shut.
Yeah, but even people who you think are conservative on the surface. I mean, I'd point to somebody like Henry Luce, right, from Time Warner.
Well, yeah.
He wasn't conservative. He was, I mean, it kind of would occasionally throw a little, a little something toward conservatives, But it's a classic example of an establishment liberal leaning person, and that's what's happened. I mean, each newspaper. I mean, I think in the 1940s, the Chicago Tribune was conservative under McCormick,
Oh yeah.
and when he died, they just took over. I think some liberals took over. Look at the Ford Foundation. I mean, it was all the big money. I mean, David Horowitz has did a really good book on this, where he talks about the foundations and the enormous wealth particularly in the big three, the Ford, Rockefeller, and Carnegie. They were started by people who were probably, well, at least Carnegie, I think, and Ford were conservatives. Rockefeller, not so much, but they finance any left wing liberal cause. They promote left-wing liberal causes, and they have the money to do it.
And this is what, just guilt built up over the centuries?
It's just a gradual assumption of power, over the centuries.
Well,
No, I think,
John D. Rockefeller Sr. would not be in favor of it. So you mean it's the inherited wealth
yeah,
comes in and feels guilty about this has all been given to us. But
I
that's such a
guess.
cliche, though.
I mean, even like I think Rupert Murdoch's two sons are liberals, and their
Oh,
wives
yeah.
are even more liberal.
Yeah.
So that's over. I can't think of. I mean, for a while we heard a lot of noise about the Koch brothers. Um, they are more libertarian. I mean, they tend
Yeah.
to be conservative when it comes to like money matters and economics, free market types. But I wouldn't call them conservatives.
Yeah.
I remember the big villain back in the 1990s was Scaife, right? Remember that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mellon Scaife. The mention of his name, it was like Satan for the left.
Yeah.
I mean, but the bottom line is, I don't think he was all that conservative. He might have made a few comments about somebody being a cocksucker or something. I know he said something really crude, and he must be conservative. He criticized so and so, but I don't think so. I mean, it's like there really aren't any. There really isn't anybody.
Well, there's also another thing of this sort of manic reaction on the left to anything that occurs on the right. I mean, the demonization of the John Birch Society in the early 60s was so over the top to almost be comical, but it somehow worked.
It did. And look, I've known people in the Birch Society for years. I've interviewed them. I don't agree with some of their analysis when it comes to this kind of overarching conspiracy theory, but they're legitimate people. I mean, they're good patriots. They're learned. They do a lot of reading. They present a constitutional view. Yeah, I have differences with them on certain issues. Like I don't agree with their free trade business, but the point is that they have a legitimate point of view. They're not. They were so demonized that to even mention
it was Nelson Rockefeller who started that, but
not only Nelson Rockefeller, but ironically, it was also William F. Buckley Jr.
Yeah, he wanted it all for himself.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought he was overrated, but that's another show.
Sure.
So, what do you predict now for the next couple of weeks? How is the second presidential debate?
It's going to be a real nail biter. I mean, it's just because of the forces that are arrayed against Trump and have been since day one. Now we've even found out that obviously what we've all suspected anyways, it was none other than good old Hillary behind the whole Russia hoax.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, she cooked it up to take attention away from her emails.
Yeah.
I just think it's going to be a real nail biter because these people are going to stop Trump at any cost, including the very worst types of things, which I don't even want to think about. And I just, it's going to be very, very tough. I mean, we can pray that we get through this and the country gets through it. And I think that if Trump does lose, it's going to be a freaking disaster for this country. It is such a lost opportunity. I'm trying to, after seeing Biden last night, I am feeling a little discouraged, quite frankly. And I'm trying to rationalize in my mind what the country will be like if he wins. And I don't believe that it'll be that bad. I think he couldn't be any worse than Obama was, maybe a little worse. But, it's just going to be another 4 to 8 years of mediocrity.
Well,
and emptiness and blandness, and
the only way that it gets worse is that the evil forces of the left have been more energized.
Yeah, but then we'll be more energized if Trump loses. I think that it was interesting. A little point that was made by I forget the minister's name. He was kind of an outspoken minister. He said, if Hillary had won the presidency, we would never have seen a shutdown. There would never have been a churches shut down.
Oh, of course
there would, because there would have been people out on the street. It would have been huge, But the thing is that everybody kind of shut their churches down because it was Trump and because they said, okay, we'll have to do it for,
Well,
You know,
that was a failure. Uh, Most of the Catholic bishops complied. There were one or two who
they
didn't.
did, yeah. And most of it was certainly most religious people did, except maybe a handful, and they still are. I mean, my synagogue wasn't open on Yom Kippur,
Well, that's
so
crazy. Yeah.
yeah, it is, and it's not. You know, of course, with I don't want to go too far into this, but the Jews are the most masked up people you can imagine. Um, but the point is that if Trump does lose, I think that we're going to see a huge surge of energy on the part of conservatives. I think that it'll be very difficult for them to dismantle the gains that Trump has made both in this country and around the world. And I think that we might see a big surge in the midterm in 2022, and it's not good. It'll be hopefully it'll avert disaster. The country still has a balance of power. We still have enough people who are aware of what freedom means. We have enough people who are
Yeah.
conscious enough that I just think that the power will remain balanced, but it'll be a major setback, and it'll be a terrible tragedy. It'll be a shame
Yeah.
that we
Well,
will have lost the opportunity to have such a progressive administration in the real sense, and it would be such a missed opportunity to see what the amazing things that could happen in these next 4 years under Trump. I mean, I think that Trump, if he's reelected, I think he's going to bring. First of all, I mean, on a foreign policy stage, I believe that the Palestinian Arabs are going to come to the peace table and sign a peace agreement with Israel finally. I think that it's going to normalize. I think Iran is going to find peace with the West. I think they're going to, I mean, I do. I mean, I just think that because where else are they going to turn if Trump wins? I think China is going to back down. They already have backed down. I mean, this country is getting tens of billions of dollars in tariffs that's going to the farmers. I think that it's just, the economy will come back in a big way. Yeah, it's just, it'll be an incredible time for this country. We've had such incredible growth, unprecedented growth these past 4 years. To flush that away just because a couple of idiots despise Trump for reasons that they cannot really articulate, and that they're willing to sell their souls to this rotten, illuminated international establishment that wants to, you know, compromise America's sovereignty and turn us into a province of the world, and who have grandiose visions of turning the entire planet into an international ant colony. They're not conscious. Most people who hate Trump, they don't know why they hate Trump. They need to wake up. They're stupid. They've been sucked into this emotional vortex, and I just hope there's not enough of them. I mean, I think it's a futile attempt to try to reach most of them, but there are some people that can be reached, and if we can reach enough of them, we can maybe save the day. I don't know.
well, the reason for the hatred, uh, I think, boils down to you look at the recent Mideast success. All right, he's been the outsider guy who said, "I know I can do this, 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 this," and the establishment says, "We've been here for 1,000 years and we've never been able to do any of that. Go away, little boy." He comes in, he does that, make the establishment look bad on a daily, hourly
Oh, they
basis.
must be seething more than ever.
So the hatred is that deep down, they know they're failures. They know they are phonies. But now this has been exposed to anyone with eyes to see. So the only reaction is hate. I mean, no one can speak highly in a logical sense. Forget whether you hate Trump or not. What has Biden ever accomplished? And here's where it gets very, very funny in a gray area, because what has Nancy Pelosi ever accomplished except feathering her own nest? What has she accomplished for the country? But those two are not the exception. It's that somehow having a great resume is now conflated with, a sense of national accomplishment, and it's completely phony. But people have bought into it, maybe because of the whole college admission thing. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Okay, at the end of the day, it may get you admitted, but after that, it's up to you. And you and I have talked about this phenomenon, which I'm afraid is more widespread than is believed, about the guy who the only thing he did in his life was score 3 touchdowns in that high school football game, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow, if he's in a small town, that's all he had to do. He's remembered, and this is it.
Rest on that for the rest of your life.
Well, look at Biden. He operates in a small state. It's very easy to get reelected once you're in office in a state that small. And he just is part of the landscape. And it's like, if
he's been resting on his, he's been resting on his, he lives in a nice house there.
If you were born any year after 1905, the only politician in Delaware you've known has been Joe Biden. So it's part of the landscape.
Right.
And I think
it's like Ted Kennedy in Massachusetts.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing.
The only way you ever get rid of someone like that is they have to pass away.
Evidently, because it was scandal upon scandal, it didn't matter.
Horrible. I mean, it was the only way, but there's no way he'd ever go.
Well, why? Because people, on a microcosm, then that's a good example. So what? People in Massachusetts thought, wow, it's Ted Kennedy.
And Massachusetts is a good example of a small state, as you point out. I mean, things can get very rotten and incestuous here.
Yeah. So if you went to the average Democrat during the height of Teddy Kennedy's time in office, and you said, well, why do you keep voting for this guy term after term? Well, he's
I just say, I mean, when I ran for office myself against Barney Frank had that kind of cult following, and I remember gathering signatures at the subway local train station, and this guy says to me, he goes, why should I sign your nomination papers? I said, well, look, you may not agree with me, but don't you think there's a benefit to having a two-party system and maybe some genuine opposition and some debate? No, I don't, he says. I don't want anyone to oppose Barney. I've been totally against that. And I think a lot of people in the state saw it that way.
Well, was this a big following because of the gay thing, or
maybe? I mean, I don't know if it was that. I mean, I think he just developed a cult following as a personality. It was kind of like, he came across as this curmudgeonous, guy that would make colorful statements of people like, oh, it's so brilliant. The Boston Globe, right? Back then, I mean, they really would talk at length about how intelligent someone was. I mean, they did this with Michael Dukakis too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Every week we'd have to hear about brilliant Michael Dukakis did this and brilliant Michael Dukakis did that. And I mean, eventually, according to the insider on that one, the Boston Globe created a monster. Dukakis started believing the press. He was like, I guess I'm pretty brilliant. To the point, he began to believe this, and his head got so big that he ran for president, and then he blew it. And the Boston Globe was like, oh, we've created a Frankenstein, with all that talk.
Well, wasn't there anybody along the way that said, wait a minute, he's not that brilliant?
He had slick PR people that would take pictures of him and his wife taking the subway to work. And, he knew how to look right. He knew how to appear right. He just, it's kind of like I think that a lot of people know how to develop a cult following. And you reach a point between that and the media pounding it away at every day where eventually you can't criticize that person anymore.
Why don't you have Dukakis on your show?
I've had him on my show. He's actually a nice guy.
Oh, okay.
I've talked to him off the air. He's actually a very pleasant man. It's
is he brilliant?
He's not. I would say that he's bright. I mean, I don't think. Yeah. But the funny thing about Dukakis is that off the air, when you're just hanging out with him, he's funny. He's garrulous. He's flirtatious with the women.
Yeah.
Likes a little dirty joke here and there. He's a good guy. But the minute the camera goes on, he's like, he becomes like this wooden, statue. He says every word, and it's a real, it's really a turnoff. I mean, he gets very insecure, and I think that if he had been a little bit more normal and personable, he would have done much better. I don't think he would have won, but
Yeah.
If people could have seen that, he's actually not a bad person. I mean, he's actually a fairly warm and interesting guy as a person. But as a public figure, he was very kind of like everything was controlled. And maybe it was this whole media campaign fed into his ego or something. I don't know.
Well, another guy related to that, who I'm thinking you ought to get on your show, is Howard Dean.
I did have Howard Dean once, and I had him
I
on.
didn't know that.
Well, at the time I was with my co-host Patrick O'Heffernan. I don't know if you remember that. Did you
Yeah.
ever hear me with him?
Yeah, actually.
He was a liberal from San Francisco, and I was here in Boston, and we co-hosted, and he got on Howard Dean. He knew a lot of these people, and it was pretty interesting. I mean, Dean, he had some funny stories to tell. He had just appeared at the CPAP. Not CPAP. What is the left-wing version of CPAP? It was Netroots Nation.
Yeah.
And he had delivered this vicious speech about everyone's a racist, right? This is before Trump. This is, I think Obama was president. This one's racist, and that's racist, and the racist under every rock. And he went on and on and on. And he came on the show, and I really got to challenge him on that. And I'm like, why do you say so-and-so's a racist? And he goes, well, didn't they question Obama's birth certificate? And I'm like, well, I mean, I think Hillary started that one. She's the one that brought that up. Obama himself, his first book, the editor released some publicity information saying that he had been born in Kenya.
Born in Kenya.
That's right, and that when he was asked about it later, he said, which they changed.
Yeah.
He said, well, that was creative license. He said, right. And by the way, speaking here as an author, and my book, by the way, is due out this week. My latest book. When a publisher goes out with promotional material, you have to sign off on that. They don't just go out with it. Obama signed off on that. He knew, you know what I mean? That's not like, that wasn't just sent out by, with his signature on it. So I pointed that out to Howard Dean, and he's like, oh, he didn't really have anything to say, but he was actually pretty good guy.
He didn't scream or anything.
No scream. I know. It was nothing like that. But
did you guys even talk about that? I mean, was that?
Oh yeah, I brought that up, and I also had on.
Of course you did.
Of course, and he's like, oh, this is ridiculous. I mean, that this would be such a big deal. And we also had on that guy Van Jones. You know who Van Jones is, right?
Oh yeah.
At the time, Van Jones was having a scandal because who's it? Not Jeff Beck. Glenn Beck.
Yeah.
Glenn Beck had brought up the fact that he had been a card-carrying member of the Communist Party.
That's right.
And the result was that Obama had to let him go as his media czar or whatever. He had some honorary position. And, Van Jones was all bent out of shape over this. Oh, how could this happen? And so I got to grill him on that. It was very interesting. I'm like, are you or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? And after some back and forth, he finally did say, yes, I was. But the way he put it was very revealing. He said, it was a youthful indiscretion, he said, his membership. He did.
Well, wait. So there's two cliches going on here. You realize you were channeling Martin Dees, and
that's right.
I guess he was channeling anybody that was caught up in that, because that was the standard excuse.
The youthful indiscretion.
Yeah.
Well, my response to that was, well, first of all, you're not disavowing it. You were saying you were indiscreet. In other words, it was great that you were communist, but you should have been more discreet about it, right? An indiscretion.
Yeah.
You've never disavowed it. And youthful, I don't know if it was so youthful. You were at you in college at the time. You're old enough to know better. I mean, it wasn't like you were, you know, a kid in elementary school here. If you were voting age. So that was a pretty good interview. Also, a very interesting guy who, by the way, has not always played the game in terms of positions. He's sometimes, you know, bucked the trend, and
Yes.
he was caught in in a talk by James O'Keefe from Operation Veritas, saying during the height of the Mueller thug, the
Nothing
Gestapo,
burger.
yeah, those Nazis. He said, this whole thing is nothing but a big nothing burger. He
Right,
said.
right.
So, yeah, he's okay.
So you've
Anyhow,
had some interesting
I
people.
have I have had some very interesting people. Unfortunately, a lot of them I don't have it on tape because it was before the internet. I mean, I had on Howard Zinn, the late Howard Zinn, and I had Noam Chomsky on, and
Oh, how could you do it? I mean,
Gloria Steinem. But I didn't get any of that on tape
yeah.
because it wasn't. I mean, I did several interviews with Barney Frank, which is one of the things that led me to run against him.
Well, how did the Zinn interview go?
He was a, I mean, he was. I mean, I found that Noam Chomsky was actually a reasonable and gregarious person.
Yeah.
Zinn was the classic leftist, humorless, with all of the affectations you'd expect from the left, with the facial tics and the humph and the kind of like, it's almost like talking to Karl Marx. I mean, banging the table, with arrogance and how could question me, and just absolutely, he took on all the mannerisms of a classic left wing revolutionary. Not a very pleasant person at all.
Hmm.
Came on with me once. Didn't like being questioned, but he
Probably like
came on.
interviewing Solinsky or something.
Yeah, that very probably a similar personality type to Saul Alinsky.
Jeez.
Not exactly a barrel of laughs.
Oh man.
So anyhow, but getting kind of, we've already been an hour, so we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah, yeah. I just as far as on the health side, the latest article has to do with a couple of interesting findings that have kind of been suppressed. They discovered that in 14%, which is fairly significant, of the very, very severe cases of COVID, it affects what's called interferon, which is a signaling protein that's used in the antiviral process in your body. And that was very interesting because they never had anything discovered where you could separately explain such a large percentage. So that's a big deal. That's a good mechanism they found out. The other one was that they discovered that many people have much greater immunity to this virus than was previously thought, because even people with no antibodies at all have high T cell counts. And they think that may be why there are so many asymptomatic positives.
Interesting. This is something that Dr. Scott Atlas is talking about.
Yeah.
He's Obama, God forbid. He's Trump's new advisor. And I heard him do an interview on this where he talked about the natural immunity, and that it's not likely that children, if a child contracts it, like, the less than 1% likelihood that they're going to become extremely ill or die.
Right.
And that we should reopen the schools, and that if you're older, then yeah, you're more vulnerable. But younger people, even teenage and probably 20-year-olds, it's not an issue. And we'll have to talk about that more extensively maybe next time. But
okay.
Anyways, so we should buckle our seatbelts for a bumpy campaign anyway. That's for sure.
Absolutely. It's nasty, and I'll just say this: I'm not so sure that I can repeat what I did in 2016, where if you're willing to gut it out till 2 a.m., you'll find out who the winner is. Because
but that was so amazing.
Maybe it will be. I don't know.
But no, I don't know. I mean, unless one side does overwhelmingly well, and I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be close. So yeah, it might drag on, but that was a beautiful night. I mean, that was incredible.
Oh, well,
I don't even want to, you can still watch those videos on YouTube.
yeah.
I mean, it's actually it's hilarious to watch the news how they reported Trump's victory. So anyway, Mike, listen, great talking to you as always. I'll talk to you next week. And
Okay,
thanks a
sounds
lot.
good. Always
All
a
right.
pleasure.
Thank you. All
See you
right.
later.
Bye-bye.